You know, we all have physical health. Doesn't mean we have physical problems, but we have it, right? Prioritizing yourself, taking care of yourself. I can't emphasize this enough.
Yeah.
You cannot pour from an empty cup.
KEPX presents a Levine Media production. This is Dignity Leadership with hosts Brooke Coleman and Rich Levine.
Get back to mental health.
Things you never knew you needed, and you probably didn't.
He probably didn't even know that. Hormel. Expand.
Okay, nice to know. Important.
So we were talking about mental health, right?
Yeah.
So you're going to love this story. Went on vacation last year because you need to take vacations for mental health, right?
Absolutely.
Vacations are very important. So here's a question though about it. Did you fully unplug or did you go on a working vacation?
I fully unplugged.
Nice.
I shut
Okay.
everything off. I
Good.
did not do one
important.
thing related to
Yeah.
work at all.
Good.
Yeah. So we were at this beautiful resort by the ocean, and I met a really cool couple. And
You know you were sending me pictures while you were on vacation.
no.
I did see some pictures. I was a little jealous that you were there. I was working at the time.
No, I would never do that to anybody. I would never torture anybody that I'm having fun and you may not be having fun.
I did see.
But anyway, so we got a guest that's coming up on one of the other shows. Actually, it was on a past show. It would have been recorded. It would have been released in May. This show is going to be released in September, I believe, if I got my mathematics right. But on that show was Edwin Britt. Edwin Britt invited me and helped me out a long time ago, and he challenged me with something. And it's when I ask you, how you doing? And he challenged everybody to say better than good. Why? Why? Well, it gets you out of a rut. It gets you thinking. It gets you going. Because if you ask somebody, if I ask you, how you doing? What are you going to answer?
I'm great.
Exactly.
I'm good.
Are you really good? Are you really great? And that's where mental health comes in. What if you're not? And you and I had this on another podcast where I
Yep.
asked you, I said, how are
Yes.
you? And you said, yeah, I'm not so good. I just failed a class.
Yes. First time ever.
Yes.
Very humbling moment.
But it happens.
It happens.
But that's all part of the mental health, right?
Right.
So with that, I met Tommy and Dani down in Mexico.
Nice.
Down in Mexico. Everything's supposed to stay in Mexico. But I had to bring her back. And I was having a conversation with Dani, and I said, hey, you're going to be a guest on my podcast. She's like, you got a podcast? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, and it's about leadership? I said, yeah. She's like, what does mental health have to do with leadership?
Everything.
That's it. That was my answer. It was everything. So on today's show, we have Dani Moore with us.
Welcome, Dani.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is exciting.
So Dani made the trip all the way from New Jersey, flew into Austin, Texas,
Nice.
just to see us. So thank you for coming out.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no, we're super excited. I've been hearing about you for months, just so you know. And we got
Good
to have
things, I
dinner
hope.
just the other night, and instantly, right? It was it was easy. So this is so exciting.
And I
for you to
told
be here.
Rich, watching the shows and your personality, and I
Yeah.
would text him like, I have so much in common with her. I can't wait to meet her. And we
Yes.
just vibe.
Yep,
Like it's the same
immediately.
wavelength.
So we
Can't
need to
wait
brag
for
on
that.
you for a minute, Dani.
Yes.
So you are the owner of the Moore Center for Cognitive and Emotional Healing. And you're licensed in the state of New Jersey.
New Jersey, and I'm certified to provide telehealth services in the state of Florida as well.
Nice.
Why Florida? Don't
Well,
go there?
It's one
Are you
of the
going to
split-
retire there?
I'm planning on
Awesome.
heading down there at some point.
So here's what's interesting, and here's one of the things. So two things struck me when I met you. One was that you were into this mental health, and I was at a vulnerable moment. I was in Mexico, right? I mean, you may never see me again, right? We may never talk, so like I could say yes to it and listen to you. But the other thing is you moved to the United States from Brazil in 2007. And then this snowball thing just kept going. I said, you need to meet Brooke. She's my co-host. She moved from Colombia.
Yeah.
And you guys, and you're like, well, Colombia's not Brazil. You know what? I'm from Iowa, for crying
I
out.
say that all
grew
the
up in-
time. Like, excuse me, Colombia is not Mexico. It's not Guatemala. It's not Honduras. Colombia is Colombia.
It's South America.
Yes,
and
it
for,
is South America.
And for us shallow people that grew up in a little small town in Iowa, I mean, everything outside of Iowa is big and huge, and it's close enough. So by proximity, I threw you guys all in that same boat.
Sure,
South America, you know, you were born in the U.S., you were not born in the U.S. So let's hear
Right.
your story.
Long story short, I guess if I can make it
No,
happen.
yeah.
Make it happen.
It'll be a little bit of a long story, but tell us your journey.
From a very young age, it was very different. I don't know how to explain the feeling. I'm going to try my best here. But there was this void. I don't know, like just didn't feel I belonged there. And it wasn't family issues or anything, because I'm very close to my family. But I started learning English at 13. By 16 years old, I spoke it fluently. And I was too young for my parents to let me go anywhere by myself, so I went to college, finished everything. So I was 24 years old. I had an opportunity to move to the US, and I took it.
Nice.
And I had a ton of feelings about it. Like, I was excited, I was petrified at the same time.
Yeah.
But I took it. And one of your episodes, somebody was talking about leadership and the courage, right? Like having that courage to take risks.
Yes.
I didn't know anybody in the US, and I took that risk. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my life.
It's incredible. To your point, like being able to step into the unknown without any safety net, truly, right? That is very courageous.
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side, yes, I was born in the United States. I left the United States when I was around 5. Spent some time in Costa Rica, Colombia, and the Dominican Republic. But Colombia has always felt like home.
Yeah.
But I couldn't explain why. I'm American. I'm full-blooded American. But there was something culturally that just identified with me. So it is amazing how we can be born in one area, love the people and the essence of it, but not truly feel at home.
I think that connection, right? And I'm glad that I followed where I thought my connection was, you know? So yeah, it has been such an empowering experience, like to step into that unknown that you're talking about, because it is scary. It's extremely scary. And anymore, like I look at potential new experiences as opportunities, and I've done this, I can do much more.
Yes.
You know,
yes.
so the power that comes with that is incredible.
That's a key leadership piece, is being able to see opportunities. Instead of obstacles, you had a will in a way where some people would just shut down.
Well, and to your point, knowing a little bit about your story, you came here because the opportunity opened itself up to itself.
I kind of created it, but
yes,
You gotta create
that. You looked and you found it and you found a way in, but that is not how you've stayed here. That got you here, and a year and a half later, things looked very different. So how did you get into the role that you're in now, into mental health?
So I was a very stubborn teenager.
Aren't we all?
I am very familiar with that. Yes, yes.
And from a very young age, my mom, she saw the.
Are you telling me I'm still a teenager?
Listen, hey, I gotta say something right now. This is the beauty of the next few episodes. We're here taping at a live audience, and my sweet parents are in the crowd here. I said something about being a stubborn. I saw my mother raise her hand and shake her hand a little bit. So, yeah. There's some wisdom here a little bit. Yeah.
Hey, well, my wife is laughing in the back. I don't know if she's laughing at me or laughing at everybody else. She goes, "Yeah, you're still stubborn." So therefore, I am still a teenager because I am stubborn. All right, so let's get back to you.
Stubborn teenager.
So stubborn teenager came to the U.S.
So my mom always saw me as a therapist. So when I first went to college in Brazil, she was like, "Go for psychology. You'd be a great therapist." And I was like, no, just because mom said so, right? I'm like, no.
I'm not going to do it. No.
So I ended up going to school and graduated as an interpreter because I loved English so much. And
what could you do with that in Brazil? Like, what was the career path for that?
So I did want to follow the interpreter role. So like attending conferences, wanted to do movies, the subtitles and things like that. But again, I didn't connect well with it.
Yeah.
So when I moved to the US and that year that went by looked a lot different, I found myself in this position where I needed to start exploring new roles, new opportunities, because I'm not going to use my previous career here. And I started business, which lasted 6 months, and I was like, this is not for me. And then I finally decided to go into psychology. And I fell in love with it in the first class. And I was like, oh,
And so
my
you
mom
fell
was
in
right.
love with it here in the United States.
Yes.
You took your first class in New Jersey.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah,
Amazing.
so then at that point, I started developing my career as a counselor, and I now, I've been in the field for 6 years, and this is my second year of my own private practice.
So it didn't happen overnight.
Not at all,
Okay.
that process. And the failing portion of it, oh, it's been there.
So
Several times.
let's talk
Yes.
about the mental health aspect, because when you and I were talking, and you had an aha moment as our relationship, our friendship was growing, we were talking, and you finally said, aha, I get it. I see where mental health and leadership are tied together.
Mm-hmm.
What was that moment for you?
Yeah, when you brought that up in Mexico, I was like, what? Like, leader, mental health, podcasts, what am I going to do in the podcast? And then you started telling me about leadership, the skills, and the more I heard you say it, the more I'm like, well, I did that. Well, I am like that. I do that too. And then I realized my aha moment, the clinical skills and leadership skills are so well connected. And that was when I was like, oh, I am a leader, because I had
Yes.
never looked at myself as one before.
So you're a leader because, well, when people come to you and they're vulnerable, so you're listening
Yes.
to them, you're hearing some of the stuff that probably drives them the craziest. And I think a big piece is in the workplace, there's a ton of toxic cultures out there. And toxic cultures create stress. Stress comes from work. And stress makes people unhappy. And so I think I've talked to you before, I told you a couple of times, I read 3 books a month. I read way too many books. As long as I, what's that? I do. But I stumbled across a book, and it's called Everybody Matters. And it was written by a gentleman by the name of Bob Chapman. And he is the CEO of a company called Barry Waymiller. And they started out in the 1800s, I believe. His grandfather ran it, passed it on to his dad, and then he inherited it from his dad. And when he inherited the business, it was in dire straits. He inherited it in the 1970s. And what they do is they made bottling products for Anheuser-Busch, because they're based out of St. Louis. And they did a lot of this industrial stuff. But he did some research on his own, and he discovered that 88% of U.S. employees are unhappy at work.
Wow, 88%.
88%. And he's gone on to start his own thing. It's called the Chapman Leadership Institute. He's done a ton of research. And he had an aha moment. He just took over trying to do this business and figure out what was going to go on. And he was sitting at a meeting, and I'll make it quick. He was at a meeting, and it was right before the NCAA basketball tournament was going to begin. Monday morning, everybody's in the break room. They're all filling out their brackets. They're all having fun.
Yep.
8 o'clock comes, the bell rings. Everybody goes to work, and nobody's having fun. He asked why. He asked why. And they basically said because work is stressful. So he went on a mission from that point on, from that one little piece of how do I make every day fun.
You know, you said something about that too that is so interesting, because you said, you know, people have to work and work is stressful. It's not fun. And even as you're saying it, I'm thinking, yeah, but it could be fun, right? And we had a guest on previously that was talking about what they would rename their title as, right?
Yes.
And he said, if I had to think about it, and we kind of put him on the spot, right? So he didn't have a lot of time to think about it. He said, but I'd love to be the chief fun officer. Like, I want to make things fun because that's important, because when they're fun, they're engaged. And when they're engaged, they are fully embedded into what they're doing and everything else. It's amazing how we associate work with work. It's something we must do, we must not like, you know, it's an obligation, we have to pay the bills, etc., right? However, could we flip that and make work a part of our identity, a part of who we are, enjoyable? It's a part of our mission in life. That would totally flip the coin.
Yeah.
And can I say something?
Absolutely.
And I think it goes with the title of the book. Like, when people
What book?
feel that they matter.
Oh, Everybody Matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
Your book.
No, this is a different book.
Oh, the
the
book.
the one that he
Bob
was
Chapman. Yes.
So when people feel that they matter, that what
Yes.
they do matters,
Yes.
then it's different.
There's
then,
buy-in, right?
Then there's that, potential connection with the role that they play in that company or in, the setting, because I think, and I'm sure it's going to come up at some point because it's going to tie into empathy at some point. This gratitude. You guys do a really good job at it on a weekly basis, talking about gratitude, right?
Attitude of gratitude.
The
Pioneer of attitude of gratitude is in the studio audience tonight. Michael Ray Newman and Edwin Brett. Attitude of gratitude. They're in the audience. So if you're on YouTube, you're not going to be able to see that side of it, but they're here. Trust me.
We just got some beautiful waves. You guys can't see it on camera. There you go. Yeah.
But yeah, so I think when people are appreciated,
Yes.
they'll dedicate more.
Absolutely. Well, and to your point, like when you're tying in what you do and what you chose to pursue as a career option, it is mental health. So you're talking, I would assume, about a person holistically, right? You're looking at them as a whole person. But a huge component of a whole person, especially in our modern world, is their work environment.
Yes, absolutely. That's where you spend most of your waking hours at.
Absolutely. So how does that tie in to your practice or to the way that you're, I think Rich is going to add on to something there, but yeah.
So we're going to save that question. How does
Okay.
it tie into your practice? Because we're
Wait
at that
for later.
15-minute magic mark where we need to thank Texas Oasis Brewing Company for letting us host and be live today with a live studio audience.
Thank you, Oasis Brewery, and
Yes.
thank you, Lake Travis, Austin, Texas.
Yes. So if you want some more information about leadership, you can find us on.
Dignity-leadership.com.
That's right. And if you're live in the audience, you can go over there and scan that barcode. It'll take you to our podcast. You can pick it up on any live streaming
That's
platform.
right. And listen, if you're on Google, just look up Dignity Leadership, and we will show up.
That's right. We've gotten pretty good at the SEO. And thank you to our producer, Kevin E., for putting us on KEPS.
Bravo!
All right, so we got to get back. Let's get back to the show. We had a question for
Thank you, guys.
And that question was?
Can you repeat it?
Yes, I can.
I'm glad
Probably
she
not
can,
the
'cause I
exact
can't.
same way, but yes. My question is around, mental health and the workplace, because when I think about mental health, and I'm a huge advocate for therapy and for self-improvement and for just doing the deep dive into the deep work. And what I've learned through that is you have to go through the mess to get through it. You can't just say, I see it and I'm going to go around it and acknowledge it. You have to go through it to get to the other side and truly evolve and change it as a person. And I've been on that journey. I'm 40 years old now, and I started at 16. And it hasn't always been pretty. It hasn't been easy for sure, but it has always been worth it every single time. And a huge component of it, when I think of holistically what mental health looks like, you're looking at the whole person. But when we look at leadership and dignity leadership, as we've moved forward, is on leadership in the workplace. How can you move from a manager to a leader? How can you truly revolutionize your workplace environment? But even in mental health, when you're talking to individuals, their workplace and their work component of who they are as a whole person is a huge chunk of who they are.
Absolutely.
So what does that look like when you're talking to individuals?
So you mean in my personal interaction with them?
Yes.
Or how? Okay. I think very similarly to the role of leaders, like when you're leading a team at work, looking into their skill level.
Okay.
Their strengths, right? But you don't just build on their strengths. You help them develop skills so they can bring up the parts that they need to improve on.
Huge.
So, and every individual I work with is different. And culture plays a huge part on it too.
Yeah.
No way.
Age groups.
No way. People are different?
All of them.
I thought they were all the same.
Yep. So it's kind of looking at each individual, because your journey is your journey, and what you do during that journey might not work for me.
Yeah.
And I have to help my clients identify their goals. I have to help them set themselves up for success. So, and that includes building new skills. And again, looking at them individually, meeting them where they are and helping them grow.
That's beautiful.
So I usually ask everybody what their definition of leadership is, but I'm not going to ask you. So all I'm going to say is if you're listening to this on a podcast, go back, hit the rewind, go back 30 seconds and listen to what she just said, because that is what leaders need to do in the workplace today.
Well, and not just that, something we do at Dignity Leadership that we hold as a value, and we call it our starting point, is when you decide to sign on with Dignity Leadership, we ask you to take a DISC profile. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of the DISC profile is to see just baseline, where do you fall? And you fall into 4 categories, right? DISC is an acronym, D-I-S-C. You'll fall into one of those. They also associate them with colors. So you'll hear Rich especially really hone in on those colors. I'm a red, and I'm a yellow, and I'm a green, I'm a blue, and it's important because it helps you kind of visualize what those differences are. But at the end of the day, what that is just helping you identify yourself. But what you said is so crucial, because even within a grouping, you are still an individual person.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And I almost say, I really think that kind of can follow into a question that I want to ask you, Rich, because I met Rich in grad school. We both started at a time, and we were both in our field. We were both a little bit older than some of our counterparts.
I was a lot older.
Yeah, maybe.
But I'm still a teenager. We established this
exactly.
earlier.
You're still 18 at heart, but the reason for that is because I say that when we met, that first day that we met, I truly would have said we would have never made a connection. Our personalities are so different at that base level that I didn't jive with it. We were in the same group, and there were only 4 people in that group, so that says something. It wasn't 20 people, it was 4. However, over time and opportunities and just allowing conversations to happen and that empathy and that vulnerability, we did get to know each other better. And so I'm going to ask you right now, Rich, let's go back to what was your why in starting Dignity Leadership, and how did that happen? What got you to this place where you said, A, something needs to change in my life for things to be different, and B, I want to be a different person going forward, and this is where I'm going to start. What is that?
I was miserable.
Yes.
I was unhappy.
I can attest to that by just meeting him the first day. Yeah.
No,
not a happy person.
And it had nothing to do with anything other than work. It was 100% work.
Because work consumed every
Yes.
part of you at that time. You had a family.
Yep.
You are married to an incredible partner.
Yeah.
You have kids. You have all these other options. You have a boat on the lake. You guys had fun that you could attest to, right? And yet you were not finding joy in these things.
I was miserable because I was being micromanaged, which leads to stress, and it caused all the other things. And if we go back to probably 2017-ish, 2018, I was at the lowest point of my life. And I was down and out.
And we met in 2019.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because I had made a decision. So now, I mean, I'll disclose this. And if anybody that had a half a brain was paying attention, they would have seen it. But the people I was working for had no brain whatsoever. So number one, I sold my house and moved into something closer to work and smaller just because I didn't want to deal. That was one less headache. That was
right.
Okay, so there's one thing. Sell the big house, move into a smaller one. Number two, I liquidated my entire portfolio of stocks with the organization. That should have sounded off a big red alarm saying, hey, something is not right.
Woo, woo, woo. Yeah.
And then number three, I actually called up my boss and said, look, if you can't find somebody to run this the way you want it run, then you need to find somebody else. And that was probably the dagger that stuck it in.
Was that before grad school?
Yes, that was before grad school.
Okay.
And for the first time, maybe this individual showed a tiny little bit of empathy. And I was by myself sitting in the parking lot at the high school waiting to pick up my son. And I remember sending that text message out. My wife was out of town traveling. I was just all by myself. And I mean, I lost it. I mean, I'm like, I got to pick myself up before my son comes out and not let him see what's going on because I was scared. I didn't want to show him that my mental health was at its bottom. And my mental health was being driven down by work.
Well, and Rich, you had been told over time, don't let those emotions show
Yeah.
on this side,
Well,
right?
that was
Because
part of
that's
yes.
weakness,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
That was the message.
But that was all part of the whole thing. And then, so as we're going through, I basically I remember it was probably 48 hours. Felt like 2 minutes. But I just said, look, there's only one way out of this. And you're going to do it or you're not going to do it. And I chose the route that I'm going to do it. And then I called in some friends. I said, look, I need some help. We got to change the culture where I'm working. I'm going to fight the system. We're going to do everything else. And that's when I really flipped the script. And then algorithms came up on the phone that said, hey, look, St. Edward's University's got a Masters of Leadership program. I was looking for a way to go, but everything that popped up on my phone was MBA programs. You said it earlier. You didn't want to do business administration. I didn't want to do it either. I was living business administration, and it was a nightmare, and I hated it. It's like, and I told myself, there's got to be a better way. And you hit it square you hit it right when you said earlier about, what you do as a mental health therapist, and you got to listen to them. You got to meet them where they're at. You got to show them opportunities, show them how to build them up. That's what leadership is all about.
Yeah, and again, how it connects so deeply and closely to what I do, and I never saw myself as a leader.
And you're a leader. You're probably one of the best leaders I've ever met. But
you know what? There is something to that, because we say this all the time, and there are aha moments all the time where we're saying, there is no shape and size to the perfect leader.
No.
Leaders are every shape and size, and you need every level of leadership. And there are loud and boisterous leaders that people automatically go to. And there are what I would say are probably the silent or the quieter ones that are coming kind of behind the scenes. And I think probably with mental health, that might be a perspective, because whether you see it or not, and maybe even your patients, whether they see it or not, you are leading them through the next aha moment in their life. They're going to come through. If they're in a tunnel at that moment, there is light at the end of that tunnel, but they couldn't see it when they came to you.
No. Yes, absolutely.
And
I think it ties into, you talk about this often in your show, in the episodes, like hope, right?
Yes.
Instilling hope. That is the number one thing I need to do in my role as a clinician. Because just like you're saying, I have so many clients that I have worked with, that I still work with, that they don't have a will to live. And at the end of the day, I have to somehow inspire them and convince them to stay alive, so they can eventually tap into, like, okay, now I see the light at the end of the tunnel, because they are in such a space that nothing else exists. So instilling hope is like probably one of the most, one of the strongest features.
I would assume, so tell me if I'm wrong here, but that instilling hope comes from empathy and listening.
Absolutely.
It doesn't come from giving them a formula and writing it down and saying, okay, you're going to do 1, 2, 3,
Nope.
and then you're going to have hope.
No, wait a second. Wait a second.
We're done. Yeah.
Bosses and managers have that. It's written down.
But that's
They've
just
got a
at
process.
management, right?
They've got a
Yes.
process on how we're going to make you happy. First, we're going to bring in
Step one.
ping pong tables. Number 2, we're going to provide a
3
snack
coffee.
bucket.
Yes.
Yes. So you know what? We're up at the halfway point again. So we need to do a shout out to Oasis Texas Brewery for having us here. Thank you very much.
Oasis Brewery. I just like saying that.
Yeah. You do it really well. And if you want to visit us on the website, it's www.dignity-leadership.com, and go over and click on the little tab that says free stuff. I like giving away free stuff.
Yes. We have some fun, free items for you. Listen, self-assessments, things to know yourself better. And we are here to help you grow as an individual or as a group. We would love to do that for you or for your company.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to do a little transition here. I want to get into a couple points. We're going to have you help our listeners get into a couple things. But you mentioned something in that last segment that got me going. If I could summarize the way I felt in 2018, was hopeless. I was hopeless. I had to create my own hope, which is sad, because as leaders, I now understand that I need to create hope for other people.
Yeah.
I create hope for my wife. I create hope for my family, for my kids, for you, for friends, for everything. And they do it in return. So it's not just me creating, but it's everybody. Unfortunately, people don't always think like that. So, excuse me. So what I want to get into is, let's talk about how Blah. I need a beer. So let's talk about how mental health, help our listeners, what do they need to know about mental health? So what's important? And you and I talked about this a little bit. So what was the first thing you would tell somebody?
I think like, in the beginning when you were introducing me and connecting the mental health piece, you said I don't have mental health, like, we all do, right?
Yes,
we
do.
all do.
Yeah.
And I think, unfortunately...
Whether we know it or not, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Whether we struggle with it or not. 'Cause
Right.
That's the key.
That's
right?
perfect. Yeah.
It's like, we all have physical health, right? Doesn't mean we have physical problems, but we have it, right? So, prioritizing yourself. Taking care of yourself. I can't emphasize this enough.
Yeah.
You cannot pour from an empty cup. And I say this sometimes, and it sounds like a cliche, like when you're traveling, you're on the plane, and they are instructing you, like if something happens, you need the oxygen mask, right? And they say to you, put yours on first before you assist somebody else. That's exactly what prioritizing yourself is. Yeah. It's putting yourself first. This is very, very different than being selfish.
Yes.
Very different. So prioritizing yourself is checking in with yourself. What is it that you need, right? Vacation. Sometimes vacation is not about going away. Vacation is a mental vacation. Take some time off. Go do something. Self-care. Under this umbrella of prioritizing yourself is learn stress management skills. Right? Like, because again, right, you're helping your folks have fun in the workspace, be more relaxed, connect. How are you going to do that if you're stressed? If you're under so much pressure, if you're not having fun, right? So that's my number one, like, take care of yourself.
And taking care of yourself is, there's much more to it, right? So one of it is physical activity.
Yes.
Get up out of bed, go for a walk. You might not be the most physically fit person, but get up and go for a walk.
Yeah.
Go for a run, do push-ups, do sit-ups, do something physical to get your heart rate up, which will also help reduce blood pressure and a lot of other things. So you got to take care of all that stuff. The other thing that happened too, 2018, we talk about where I hit the rock bottom. April 1st, 2018, I adopted a keto diet and cut sugar out completely. And what has changed for me is like my mental focus, my clarity. Now I have some bad days or some bad weeks where we start all these business trips and I fall off the wagon a little bit. But once I like cleaned all that toxins out of my system, I mean, you are what you put into your body.
Absolutely.
You put negative thoughts into your head, you're going to talk negative.
Absolutely.
You put or whatever you want to call them, all these goofy products that come out of box cereal, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
You put processed food is what I say.
Yeah.
You put that in your body, it's bad fuel.
Yep.
And so you got to clean yourself out, both mentally, physically. So that's another piece of the prioritize yourself.
Yes.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing, this is even before that, and I started working out. I was working out since I think it was 2011 or 2012, somewhere in there. My son, who's now an adult, walks up to me and hits me in the gut with his fist. Dad, you're fat. You know what? That hurt. But I said, you know what? If I don't start doing something about my health, I'm not going to be there for the future, which goes back to what you said earlier. I'm not going to be able to give hope to this kid. I'm not going to be able to show him. So that was part of a piece that started up to me, so that I'm big on the prioritize yourself.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think this self-care looks very different for everyone.
Yeah.
Because, again, everybody's different, right?
And you and I have talked about some of the self-care stuff. I think you do boxing or something, don't you? Go and knock the crap out of those big heavy bags.
Oh, wow.
It's fun.
I don't want
See, that's self-care.
But it's it's self-care. It's relieving. It's releasing
Big time.
releasing stress. A lot of different things.
Yeah,
I just don't want to be on the
absolutely.
end of a right hook. Okay.
All right. So what else? What else lends to mental health?
Self-awareness.
Self-awareness,
So becoming more self-aware. And I mean your thoughts and belief systems, your feelings and behaviors. They all go hand in hand. If you're familiar with cognitive behavioral therapy,
What is cognitive? Because not everybody will be.
Yeah.
So define
what is
it.
behavioral therapy?
It's an approach, evidence-based approach for therapy, and it comes from this premise that your thoughts will influence your feelings and your behaviors. So they're all tied together. So the way I use that to teach my clients. I teach them about these things separately so they can learn to integrate them, because most people don't know actually what thoughts are, what feelings are, or behaviors.
And how they integrate together.
Right.
Forget about that, because they're all separate to begin with, right?
Yeah, and then the way I describe is like the English language, and you will appreciate this, is a very difficult language.
Yes.
Okay? And it's a very complicated,
Yes.
nonsensical sometimes. Because
Coming from a second language, it is nonsensical.
Yeah,
Yes.
I have credibility to talk about it. So think about it. We try to express our feelings when in reality we're actually expressing a thought. So I'll give you an example just to illustrate that, to highlight the importance of learning what thoughts are or feelings are, because they are not the same. So if I say, oh, I feel it's going to rain today. No, you don't feel that. You think that. You think it's going to rain. Maybe you look at the sky. Maybe, every time it rains, coincidentally, you have a pain on your ankle. And like, oh, I feel the pain. Okay, you feel the pain, you don't feel the rain, right? Like, so we cannot change our feelings alone.
Yeah.
You can't just sit here and say like, hey, okay, Rich, just don't feel miserable. It just doesn't work that way, right? So, but I can change my thought process and I can change my actions, which in turn will change my feelings, right? Yeah. So, if I don't know the difference between thoughts and feelings, and I know that I cannot change my feelings alone, how do I know what to change here? Because I'm speaking a thought when I think it's a feeling. No wonder I continue to feel miserable, right? So self-awareness, I think we all have these thinking styles, these thinking patterns. Do we have the tendency to be more pessimistic? Do we have the tendency to be more optimistic?
Right.
Do we have the tendency to be unrealistic altogether? Right? So checking in our biases, right? And again, our thoughts will influence our emotions, and our behaviors are guided by that, the thought process and the beliefs. So being aware, like we can't be aware 24/7, right? We can't be mindful 24/7, but the check in, okay, what am I thinking right now?
So how do you teach your patients to check in like that when it isn't a natural assumption? It's not something that comes naturally. You cannot be self-aware 24. It is exhausting to do that 24/7. Impossible. So
we won't function.
How do you even take the first step to get there?
Mindfulness skills.
Okay.
Part of one of the first steps that I teach them, just to make a point to find that space throughout the day to check in.
Okay.
And then you make that a habit. You grow in that habit. That's a set of skills right there.
Absolutely.
So it's like some people journal, right? That's another way of checking in, right?
I journal.
Right.
Well, it's a
that's
learned
very
behavior.
powerful.
I love that.
That's
You're
a very
checking in.
powerful.
It might not come naturally, but you can learn.
You can definitely
to do
learn.
that. Okay.
And that, again, right, I cannot change my feeling alone, but I change my action. So if I am committed to take that break, to make that space in my day, that's an action. And then over time, right, because it's over time, it's not overnight, right?
Not overnight, yes.
Over time, I develop this rhythm that comes more naturally. So we can be here right now, even though we are focused on what we're doing. I can bring myself to be fully present here, active listening, and
we just did a show on that.
I know.
I love that. Yes.
I watched it. So again, that awareness, right? So like the becoming self-aware, as far as like the leadership position goes, and how it can help. Like everybody's different, so become self-aware. Become aware of your biases. You're dealing with individuals that are different than you. Try to come from that perspective.
It almost seems like as you build that, you're developing skills.
Yes.
So what does that look like to you, or what is that? You're building your. I call it a toolbox.
Absolutely.
If you've heard on some of on some of the podcasts, I always say that, right? You're adding tools to that toolbox.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Or buying new tools.
Or buying new tools. Sure. Yeah.
And I describe it that way too. Like, I oftentimes encouraging my clients to expand their toolbox, right?
Yeah.
Because sometimes a set of skills is not going to be appropriate in certain settings, right? So And I think like connected to this self-awareness comes this, my third tip for leaders to put in their own toolbox to develop or improve this assertiveness, the empathy, and social intelligence. The assertiveness.
What is social intelligence and assertiveness?
Picking up social cues. Like a behavior can tell you so much. And if we make a point, again, connected to the mindfulness, to the observation without the filters, because if you're working on self-awareness, you're mindful of your biases, right? So removing those filters and observe. A behavior can tell you a lot. Like, if you're walking around and you're hunched over, like, that's telling me.
It's data. It's visual. It's
Absolutely.
visual communication.
Absolutely.
And we talked about this in our last episode with Dr. Heather Weston Barton. It's the fact that communication and active listening comes in more than just hearing. You got to be able to see it. And
It's
so when
all
you start
senses.
seeing those things, you got to pick that stuff up.
Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome. So I want to recap real quick. So you've given us 3 tips so far, right? So number 1 is prioritize yourself.
Yep.
Number 2 is become more self-aware.
Yes.
Is that correct? And then number 3 is improve your assertiveness and social
Intelligence and empathy, right?
Okay,
Because they are
that's a lot
connected
right there. So
Yeah.
3 is assertiveness, empathy, and social intelligence.
And I'm going to throw a bonus out there.
Ooh,
Let's hear it.
All right, bonus, guys.
And it's going to connect again to the work that you both do, fostering a culture of gratitude. Again, that appreciation. My clients know, like, I express my gratitude. Sometimes they'll thank me. I'm like, no, thank you for trusting me, for being here, for showing up for yourself. Throwing that praise, throwing that gratitude. That's inspirational. That's motivational.
So
What do you
help
think
us.
that does for the individual? Is that what I mean? What does that do for your patient or for just the individual in general?
Personally, I think it strengthens their connection to the work that they're doing.
Wow. Yeah.
Big time.
So help us connect
Yeah.
attitude of gratitude to leadership. Why?
Yeah.
So why is it so important to be grateful?
Why it's so important to be grateful. I think feeling that you matter, and then being told that, being acknowledged that, people see you, right? So when you're expressing that gratitude to someone, it's like, oh, they see me, they hear me, I matter, and they will go the extra mile and more with what they're doing because they connect more deeply with that role.
For me, it's also about being thankful for what you have.
Oh, absolutely.
Versus what you do not have.
Yes.
And I would say, I think this often. I say this to people all the time when I'm one-on-one with them. You are here for a unique purpose. You're not here by accident. You matter. Just specifically saying to somebody, you matter and you're important. No matter what you've heard in the past, no matter what you'll hear in the at this moment, I want you to know that you are important, that you're significant, that your existence is here and you are unique. Because you're right. We can we can drill it down. And we do this, right? And this is important to a certain degree. Like, we can take personality profiles and assessments, all these things to understand society as a whole, to understand how we work together. And yet at the end of the day, we are individuals and we contribute at an individual level.
Absolutely.
And I want to add one thing here before we shift gears.
Sure.
So on her number 1, prioritize yourself, and number 2, be more self-aware.
Yep.
Those are 2 things that we do every day at Dignity Leadership. Through the DISC assessment. Number 1, we're prioritizing you because we're trying to help you get a picture of who you are. And then being more self-aware is also saying, okay, here is how my behaviors affect
The whole.
picture around me.
Yep.
So with that, we're up to the next marker time. The time is flying. So we're sitting here with Dani Moore from
too
the
much
Moore
fun
Center
here.
for Cognitive and Emotional Healing. You're licensed in the state of New Jersey and for online for Florida, correct?
Yep, correct.
Yep. And again, we want to thank Oasis Texas Brewery Company for allowing us to
Yes.
use this space today.
Bravo. Thank you, Texas Oasis Brewery.
That's right. And if you need some more information, you can find us at dignity-leadership.com on the web.
Or just Google us at Dignity Leadership, and you can find us.
All right, so before we get too carried away, I want to go
Okay.
through the 3 points that you just gave us. So number 1 is prioritize yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2, self-awareness. Number 3, develop and improve assertiveness. And then your bonus, foster that attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude.
All right. So I see Kevin E., our monster millennial producer, is throwing on the headset. Make sure that microphone's hot over there, okay, Kevin?
All right, so we're wrapping
got
up
it.
here, which means we've got questions to ask. What have we learned? What are we going to do with what we learned?
Yes.
Take it away.
And who's going to hold you accountable?
And who's going to hold you accountable?
You know what?
Not
So
my favorite
here's
part,
here's
yeah.
what I love doing, because I love our producer Kevin E. He is the best. So everybody give Kevin E. a round of applause for producing all this. So his mind has been all over the
Yes.
place, but I love putting him on the spot. So today we talked about mental health. What one thing did you learn, Kevin?
get that
What one
face
thing
on the
did you
video?
learn?
Well, I'm going to start with being self-aware, because I'm not sure if it was Brooke who said it or if it was Danielle, but you can't
Yeah.
pour from an empty cup.
Yep.
Yes.
And now she's not.
it
she's
was
gone.
Dani, but let me tell you, I say that a lot. So again, we do.
Well, my
We
wife
are
says
in
it to me all the
sync.
time, and
Yes.
it kind of just goes in one ear and out the other. But when you hear it from an expert, it's like there's some validity to it. And when you're talking about self-awareness, I'm like, I'm obviously not aware. You know, if someone's telling you that you're pouring from an empty cup. So that's what I learned.
I like that. I like that. All right, what about you, Rich?
I'm fully aware that I'm in charge. My red comes out way too often.
Okay, let's
So
expand on that a little
sometimes,
bit.
so red is the dominant on the disc profile, which we talked about self-awareness. So I need to back up sometimes and realize that my cup isn't always full, and I might be trying to pour my cup into everybody else's that's empty, and they might be going, wait a second, I don't want your junk coming from my cup. So your analogy of that cup being empty, well, sometimes I think mine's full, and I think I'm full of myself, and it's kind of about losing the ego. So, I mean, it's not directly what you said, but I think sometimes I get just too overboard, too dominant, and say, hey, you're nodding yes.
Like, yeah, you shift it around. You know, I'm gonna put you on the spot. What does that mean? You know, for your mental state in terms
Yeah.
of some self-awareness?
All right, for my mental state, it means that sometimes I'm an asshole. And I'm just going to say it, and I think that's part of what the leadership thing that we go back to. In my Hollywood hero story, I mean, I'll just be honest with everybody. I was the boss that could get all the processes right, and I could make them better. I could find a better way
The
to do
man
everything.
can make a beautiful PowerPoint. Let me just point that out.
But you know what?
Okay,
It's
a
not about-
beautiful PowerPoint.
But it's
That
not
does
about
not
that.
surprise me.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I could do all the sales stuff. I could get the sales team to sell more than anything. I could create profits. I could do all that stuff. But my aha moment was I was pissing everybody off. My team, the bosses were happy with me because they love me.
Sure.
Oh, you're making all this money for us. Well, of course you're happy. I'm making you money. But my team was miserable. And that
Right.
was the aha moment. That's my Hollywood to hero story. I was a jerk. I went out. I got some self-awareness. I started learning how to fill my cup up so I could help other people.
Yeah.
And now sometimes that's a default of mine, because here I go again back to my processes. Like, all right, my cup's full now. I need to help you. They might not be ready for that help.
Right.
I still think you're applying it more professionally than mentally. I'm just saying that's where your brain goes clearly.
It does. It does. Actually, let's sit on that for just a minute. Let's
So do I
think
have
about
to
it.
pay
Like,
you
what
right now
could
for this,
be-
Danny? We're going
Yeah.
through therapy
How
right
much do I
now.
owe you?
I know,
You guys are
Danny,
analyzing me. This is a humbling moment.
I'm off the clock. Just
Talk
saying.
about vulnerability.
I will say this. Because my aha moment wasn't necessarily, I love the filling the cup. I'm a huge advocate of that. But I think on my end, it comes down to self-awareness. So I am very fast, very quick to take care of everybody else and not myself. Over and over and over again. And I hit a wall. We actually, on a previous podcast recently, maybe today, we might have recorded it earlier. We were just saying, Brooke is so busy. It was one of our guests that said, I would love to ask her to be on my executive board, but I don't know if she has time because she's so busy. It kind of broke my heart a little bit, because actually, A, he's right, and B, I want to be everything for everyone except for me. And then I take the short end of the stick. So there is something to that. And I feel like that is an ongoing lesson. I get a little bit better at it, but then I feel like I'm healthy enough where I can just jump in and save everybody else again. So it's a constant give and take. It's a little bit different, but
I'm exactly the same as you.
Yeah.
And it can be very difficult. Along with that, the prioritizing yourself, right? The self-care part, right? Being able to say no.
Yes.
Right? Being able to
being able to and being confident to say no. Like, just
but I'll challenge you
Okay,
on that.
yes.
Because the comfort will come over time.
Okay.
The more you do it. At first, it will definitely be very challenging, especially because it's not your tendency or your rhythm.
Right.
But developing healthier boundaries for that reason, because then you're assisting everybody else, and at the same time, you're burning yourself out.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think through my master's program, I have learned to do that for myself. I see 7-8 clients a day, every single day, and it's like, again, being able to be this blank slate for them after each session, to be able to reset myself fairly quickly, right? So something from the previous sessions that don't spill over to the next,
absolutely,
right?
yeah.
So the boundaries, right? The healthy boundaries in my personal life that I had to develop. And yes, I have the tendency to please people. Like I'm yes. If I have the time, but then I had to be uncomfortable until I was able to be more comfortable, saying like, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm unable to help you right now, or I can't attend this event because I need to rest."
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
that's part of leadership, is exiting that comfort zone, getting used to being
Absolutely.
uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so we got to ask you the question: what did you learn?
I'm gonna go with, you never know who you're inspiring or motivating, because my aha moment was like, oh, I am a leader. I guess people do look up to me or something like that, right? So I think like you never know who is watching you, who feels motivated or inspired by you. So these skills that we're referring to on the clinical level or leadership, we can all learn as people to have better relationships, to improve our relationships. We can all benefit from listening better, supporting each other more, understanding from different perspectives, growing with these different perspectives, right? You said something, I believe it was you, in one of your episodes. You don't grow. If you're hanging out, if you're around people that think the same, that do the same, you're so limited. You put yourself in this box. Now, the moment you step away and you're like, tell me your journey. Now it's like this opportunity for expansion. Exactly. And it's beautiful, to be able to be more open. So I think my takeaway is that, like, you never know who's watching you.
Absolutely.
So be a better human being.
Okay, so let's roll with that. We're just going to stick with you for a minute. Okay. So that's what you've learned. That's what you need to do. Now, how are you going to do this?
I think I can continue to improve on those skills. I think, they are part of my daily life. And my personal relationships have benefited a lot from learning these clinical skills. And like we talked about, you mentioned earlier, our workspace or our function at work is where we spend most of our time. And so we do tend to blend in a way, like your workspace, not your workspace, but the role you play in your work spills over to your personal life, right? And vice versa. So I think, continuing to develop more and more self-awareness, and, that self-care for me is top priority. So I think, just continuing to develop that.
Brooke?
This is an easy answer for me. Luckily, Dani will be here tomorrow with us, and I will be on Lake Travis with her for about 4 hours in the afternoon on a boat. She can't go anywhere.
You're going to corner her,
I'm gonna, yeah, I am. First of all, I absolutely love her, but second of all, I just want to pick her brain. So I think for me, and it truly is, and this is a constant evolution, but filling from that empty cup or not putting myself first and having those conversations where someone says, have you thought about this? Or you need to be aware of this. It helps me and it adds to my toolbox. So
it's eye-opening, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's where I'm going to start.
Awesome. So you're on the spot for tomorrow. Kevin E?
Mine comes right back to the self-aware thing, because it's kind of like what Brooke said, where if you're helping someone else all the time, and you're not doing anything for yourself,
Yes.
I almost will do that as a way to distract me and other people from actually having to deal with my own stuff.
Yep.
So I think by being self-aware, I can help fill that cup.
Yeah, that's good. What about you, Rich?
What about me? I think I've figured out that I don't know as much as I think I know. I thought I had some more of this stuff figured out. I know. It's humbling. Kevin called me out on it a minute ago. He goes, "You're still in the professional mind."
Well, and it's true because it's comfortable.
It's a big part of your personality.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. That's the comfort zone. Yeah.
And a defense mechanism.
Don't worry. You know what? We're going to add more episodes to this podcast. We can undelve
Yeah,
this.
we'll unpack that.
Yeah. Don't you worry. Kevin and I are here every month.
Oh, goodness. Yeah, that's going to help. So there we just covered a couple of things, right? So there's my accountability partners. I've learned that I've got to, how I'm going to use it, I got to keep asking for help. I can't do everything by myself, no matter
good.
how
That's
strong
good.
I think I am. No matter how many tools are in my toolbox, as you and I've talked about in the past.
Yep.
I can't do all this on my own.
And that opens up the vulnerability.
It
right?
does.
Because
It does.
sometimes it's difficult to ask for help. Sometimes it's difficult to say, I don't know.
So we've mentioned several times that I do read a couple of books every now and then. And I'm reading a book right now. I'm not going to get into the title of it, but it talks about vulnerability. And when they open up vulnerability, it actually improves your connections. And the way they went through it, and what the study actually proved is they thought the exact opposite was going to happen. That was actually going to scare people away when they became vulnerable. Like, oh crap, you got a lot going on there.
You're feeling stuff. I don't want to have to deal with it.
Actually,
right?
it was just the opposite. And not only with the individuals, it was the people that were in the room that had the collateral damage. They saw that pour out, and they all wanted to help and make teams better.
Yep.
It's part of how the Navy SEALs have built some of their strength conditioning stuff.
Which is funny because you talk about military people and vulnerability, which is true, and there's structure there, right?
Yep.
I think that part of the growing process is to peel back that onion layer until you get to that part of the onion that is just, if you get to the middle of an onion, my personal experience with cutting onions is I bawl my eyes out, right? But regardless, after you get through those hardened pieces, the middle of the onion is soft and wet and everything else. And you have to be willing to go and to go and to go and to go and to go until you get to that point. It doesn't happen overnight. You mentioned that. It does not happen overnight.
Definitely a process.
Yep. It's a process.
Can you believe an hour's already flown by?
No.
So let's cover Danny's last 3 points to help our listeners.
All right. I like it.
So Danny, you tell us in 30 seconds, what are the top 3 points plus your bonus that you brought with us today?
Okay. Prioritizing yourself.
Number one.
Taking care of you. Become more self-aware. Your thoughts, belief systems, feelings, and behaviors included. Number 3 would be develop or improve assertiveness, empathy, and social intelligence. And the bonus I threw out there is foster this attitude of gratitude.
And if you if you follow Dignity Leadership every Friday on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok.
And TikTok, yes.
You will see our attitude of gratitude because we take every Friday and just take a moment and reflect on what are we grateful for.
We missed a Friday. I missed today. But we'll find a piece
That's
out of this
okay.
and we'll post it.
That's
but
okay.
The day's not over yet.
I know it's
that's
not
right,
over.
that's
But
right.
for anyway,
it is still Friday.
For more information, you can find us on the web at dignity-leadership.com. If you go out there at the bottom in our footer, you can find all of our social media. We've got free stuff, including 3 free courses in our Dignity Leadership Learning Laboratory and a whole lot more. So I want to thank Oasis Texas Brewing Company for allowing us to be here today. I want to thank our producer, Kevin Ebeling, KEPX.
Thank you, Rich.
I want to thank our guest, Danny Moore, for being here with us today, flying in from New Jersey.
Thank you guys.
And I want to thank everybody, our live in-person audience, for joining us today.
Yes.
So with that, keep paddling.
Keep paddling.